Okay, before we fix this photo, let's just recap real quickly what our workflow has been. We opened our images in Photoshop CS3's RAW. We processed them in RAW. Remember, it didn't matter whether it was a JPEG or whether it was a TIFF or a RAW image. We start there. We always start there. It's the easiest way to get our images done. And you know what? A lot of times when we click OK and open the image in Photoshop, all we have to do is sharpen for output. Just do that last bit of sharpening and we're done. That is a workflow that I use quite a bit. Number two is that we have to go in here and fix some problems, and that's what we're going to look at right now. And with a problem photo like we have here where it's way too dark on this side of the photo and way too light on this side of the photo, and there's a way that we can balance this. Now, we might have been able to fix a little bit of this inside of Camera Raw by using the fill light control to add some light in here, and the recovery over here. We could have done some of that, but we can actually do more of it in Photoshop. So we're going to look at that next. And so just to recap, Camera Raw first, then we might finish there, sharpen and done. If not, and we need to do more color correction, then we'll pick it up in Photoshop and then we'll do our curves and other adjustments that we need to do, like what I'm going to show you here, and then we'll sharpen and then prepare for print. And we are going to do that. That's coming up. And at the end of this class, I'm going to show you the whole thing at one time. We're going to go from beginning to end all the way to tie up everything that we've done here into one little package. Okay. So here's a problem photo, and here's how to deal with it. The best way to deal with something like this is too bright, this is too dark. And you can either use it for a photo that has areas that are blown out and too bright, or in areas that are too dark. You don't always find one that is only I can take a photo that has both problems in it at the same time. Most people only have one. I can find photos with two problems. So we're going to go under the image menu under adjustments, and you're going to choose shadow and highlight. Now here's the thing. When Adobe invented this, they figured that if you have a problem, chances are it's with your shadows. Chances are you have a backlit photo, so a subject with the light behind them, or in this case, very bright outside and darker in here. They figure your problem is in the shadows, and they're probably right. So when you open it, it automatically opens up your shadows by 50%. The thing about that is, it's very obvious it lets you see obviously what the tool does. It's just usually 50% is way too much. So when I open it, just understand everything in the shadows is going to get 50% brighter and look kind of fakey and lame. Here we go. See, just as I said, it looks better. I mean, it really brightened it up, but it's a little bit too much, I believe. So what we do is inside this slider, I usually set this back down to 0. Because I want to be able to kind of bring it in and see where it looks good to me. More like something maybe in there instead of all the way up here. It's just maybe a little too bright. All right. So you can set this as a default, and I'll show you how in just a moment. But for now, we're going to click on this button called Show More Options. One of the advantages of using the Show More Options is you have more controls, and you can get a more realistic looking fix in the shadow areas. One of the ways to do that is to lower the amount and raise the radius amount up quite a bit, usually over 200, something like that. And I usually raise the tonal width a little bit too. For some reason, it usually winds up being kind of almost a diagonal line where I've lowered the amount, I've raised the tonal width a bit, and then raised the radius up a lot. But look how much more realistic it looks. One of the problems I find with shadow and highlights is sometimes it looks a little unrealistic when you use it. You use it and you go, oh, you can tell you've used shadow and highlight. It just has its own kind of look, right? Well, I found that using these settings, it looks much more natural. So that fixes one side of our photo. So I've covered the other side we haven't done yet. We haven't addressed this yet, but at least we fixed this. I'm going to turn off the preview here and show you what I mean. See, there's before and there's after. It's a natural looking fix. And the photo is certainly better right there. But now, let's move this over here so we can see the other problem side. So we fix the shadows, and then we go to the highlights. For the highlights, we're just going to drag this amount slider to the right and watch over here. Now, this slider works different than every other slider in Photoshop. Think about it. When you drag a slider to the right in Photoshop, it always gives you more of what you're asking for, right? More blur, more sharpening, more. In this case, it gives you less. As you drag to the right, it compresses and gives you less highlights. Watch. So it's kind of reminiscent of the recovery slider. Look how it brought the detail out. Look at that as I drag. So you can find a place that looks natural, maybe somewhere in there. And then look how much more balanced the whole photo looks. Now I'm going to turn the preview on and off so you can see the whole photo now and what a difference we've made just moving those couple of sliders. Right? Big difference. So that's just one way. Now, a couple things I want to tell you about this. There's a couple little tricks more that we can do here. Number one is if you are tired of having this thing open up at 50% shadows, let me just go ahead and click OK just to kind of get rid of that, right? So we've saved that. We like that. And by the way, there's a little, that's not a bird. It would be interesting if it was a bird, but sadly that is just it's a smudge on the camera, sadly. It's a smudge on the lens or some sensor dust or some other silly thing. So I'm going to go get rid of that real quick before we move on. I'm going to get the healing brush, make the brush a little bit bigger. We're going to option click somewhere nearby in a similar texture, option click, or in PC would be alt click. We'll just paint right over that, and that's gone. I'd probably do the same thing to get rid of this little stick and maybe even these little spots down here. And get the brush. You want the brush ideally a little bit bigger than the spots you're going to remove. So I would just click. I'm not painting, I'm just clicking. So I sample in a nearby area that kind of has the same texture, and then just click. And watch how quick it is to get rid of this distracting junk. Like that. Alright, just a few clicks, and the whole photo looks much less distracting. We got rid of our sensor dust problem, and see how much quicker it is to do this here. Remember earlier we were doing it in Camera Raw and it was a little bit tedious. That's why I say in Camera Raw you can do one or two of these, but when it gets to something serious like this, you're going to need more. Did I smudge that edge because I got too close? Probably. See if I can kind of get around that. And there's a couple right here. There's actually something under the chair. It looks like part of a palm frond. I can either leave it or get rid of it. There are some blue scuffs. Let's get rid of those. All right. There we go. Okay, so there's something on this wall. Okay, there, we got rid of all the junk. There's a couple things down here. I know, I can't help it. But distracting stuff is very distracting to me. Sorry. Okay. You know what else, too? Had I been thinking, I would have turned this cushion around. You can see the front of the cushion there. I'd probably get rid of that, too, in reality, and there's a little smudge over here. Well, just kind of give you an idea of the kind of things that I would do to this photo. All right, so there's a couple other things we can do inside besides fixing spots that we can do inside. Number one would be when you setting the defaults, right? So let's go to Shadow and Highlight. The default looks like this when it comes up, a 50% bump. If you don't want the 50% bump and you find yourself, I usually use around 25 to 30%, somewhere in there. You can set it to 25. Go to Show More Options and hit Save as Defaults. From now on, it'll always open at 25. If you always open this thing with these panels in place, you can just choose Save as Defaults and leave it open. Just click OK and it will leave it open, so it'll always open up in the expanded mode. All right? So that's just a couple little tips to kind of at least have it show up the way you want it from now on, so when you choose it in the future, it'll automatically show up with 25% and the panel open. All right. So, all right, that's one thing. The second thing is this. Let's go back and revert this. Here's a little trick, and you can only do this in CS3. And that is to be able to apply this as an adjustment layer. Now, if you've gone to the adjustment layer panel, you realize there is nothing here that says shadow and highlight. It just doesn't exist here. But we're going to trick it into giving you the same functionality as an adjustment layer. So what does an adjustment layer give you first, and then we'll see why it's so cool. First thing is, adjustment layer gives you the ability to, make a change. So we'll go ahead and just make a change here. Kind of brighten that up, and there's not much we can do about the highlights. Maybe there's not, pull them down. See, it looks kind of ratty. All right, what does adjustment layer give you the ability to do? It gives you the ability to turn on and off the adjustment. It comes with a mask, so you could paint over parts of it if you didn't like it. You could go and, since its mask is filled with white, you would have to paint with black. So you could paint away parts of the adjustment if you wanted that window to be brighter. See how it just comes back, and if you wanted this to be darker or something, you could, right? So it has a built-in mask. It allows you the ability to change your mind. Double click, and you can say, I made that too dark or too bright or whatever. And then it has the ability to just say, you know what, I wish I'd never done that at all. So those are the characteristics of an adjustment layer. It gives you that undo ability. Okay, it gives you that. Now, here's how you trick your photo into letting you create a shadow and highlight adjustment that actually has that information, has that same kind of ability built right into it. And that is to do this. First, go into the filter menu and choose Convert for Smart Filters. And it just, you click OK. That's just a warning saying, hey, I'm going to make it editable. And if you look in the, I'm going to zoom in so you can see. Actually, I don't want to zoom in on the photo. I want to zoom, well, I won't be able to zoom in, I guess, as far as I want. Right here in the corner is a little document window. There's a little document icon. What that's telling you is this is now a smart object. So you know that much. Then you go under the image menu, under adjustments, and look at that. Shadow and highlight is available as a smart filter. So in CS3, they added the ability to have editable filters after the fact, and the filters acted just like adjustment layers. Well, shadow and highlight technically must be a filter because it lets you use it as a smart filter. So it comes up and you make the changes you want like we did, okay? We'll just do that, right? Something like that, right? Did we do something along those lines? We didn't really adjust. There we go. And this came up a bit. This came up a bit. And I think even this came up a bit. There we go. So look over here. And what you'll find out is now we have the same controls that we have as adjustment layer. Number one is I can turn the adjustment on or off. It has a white mask. If I click on it, then I can go paint parts of it away. So if I decided I wanted this to be brighter, I could go in here, right? So this is very similar to what we just did using a regular adjustment layer. If I wanted to, I could change the adjustment. I could double click on it and say, well, you know what? I went a little too far with this. Let's not make it so bright. Let's not pull this back so far, right? And I also have the ability, since the other one was on a layer, I could have changed the opacity or the blend mode. I have that's these two little, click right on this little spot right here where my cursor is, and you get the ability to change the blend mode and the opacity, which I could have done with an adjustment layer. And the last thing is I can just change my mind and say, you know what? I wish I'd never just done this at all and just throw the whole thing in the trash. So that's it. You get the exact same functionalities you would as an adjustment layer, but it's a smart filter. So, again, I would have probably been able to do part of this inside of Camera Raw, but sometimes you don't realize these problems or are able to deal with them till later. By the way, just for the record, there are a couple of other things that I would do to fix this image that we didn't talk about. Let me undo it. Take you back to where it looks a little better here. Some things that I would have done is you can see that there is some kind of a blue thing out here. It could be like a 55-gallon drum or something. I would have gotten rid of that by making a selection in this area. Well, you can't make a selection with a rectangle tool. You'd have to do it with something like the polygonal lasso tool. Go in here and it draws straight line selections, right? This tool. I would have selected this area and then I would have gone in here. Let me just go ahead and flatten the image. We don't need all this other stuff. I would have gone in here and basically cloned over some beach into that spot so you don't see it. So let's make the brush a little bigger. Option click, and I would have cloned in some beach over here or something so it doesn't look so. There we go. Our 55-gallon drum is gone. I option clicked over here on PC. You would alt click and then just paint it over that area. Another thing I would do is, you see over here there's like a blue corner of a window. I probably would have gotten rid of that too. And again, to me, it's just a distracting element that's drawing your eye away from the subject, which is really this chair. So the trick to do that is kind of the trick I showed you earlier when we were working on patching a wrinkle, and that is to option click right on this line. On PC, at alt click. Move up here, hold your option key, but don't click, just to kind of line it up. And then I would continue this wall upward, up that way. And then do it again. It's a little messy right now, but you know what? Wouldn't hurt to maybe make the brush a little bigger. Let's see if that helps. And then kind of go right in here. There we go. Just kind of fix that up. Well, that's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That's a hack job is what that is. You'll have to take a little more time than I'm doing here to really get this right. Maybe I need to go a little bit more here because I think the color was a little off. There we go. That's better. The problem was, if you go down a little too far, it was picking up this darker. You notice the chair is casting a shadow back here, and I was kind of painting shadow. You know, you have to kind of get a nearby area so you kind of have more of a consistent look in the color. Let's see, where do we line up? Right there. You can see you can pretty much patch this right up just by continuing this wall right up like that. And you probably could have actually gone right over here, clicked on that line, and just carried this over to there like that. Yeah, that works fine too. And get rid of that up there. All right, it needs a little bit of touch up, but nothing too drastic. Right in there maybe. All right. So that anyway, I would have gotten rid of that, and gotten rid of that, gotten rid of the little spots, the little fake bird out here, the blurry bird. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so there's dealing with a typical problem that you'll run into in a couple of great ways. Oh, one last thing. This is important. One of the problems you'll also find with shadow and highlight is that, let's go ahead and revert this, is sometimes you'll actually see a physical color shift. That when you do this, it actually will, like if you're working with, especially with someone that, a photo of someone where there's a subject in it, like a person. Let me rephrase that. It's a photo where your subject is of a person. It'll make their skin like too red when you open up the fill. All right. There's a way around that. And here's the way. Before you apply your shadow and highlight, switch your image mode to LAB color, to lab color. All right. This doesn't affect the look of your photo, but it affects how your channels are built. So right now you have a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. So these are basically three versions of a grayscale image, but when you put a blue tint over it and then you add I don't want to actually make a selection, add a green tint, and then you add a red tint, it becomes a full color photo, right? Watch what happens when you switch to LAB mode. Look at the channels palette over here when I do it. Watch. Now all the detail is here, and then the color is separated to the A and the B. Remember earlier when I talked about sharpening, I said I only want to sharpen the luminosity of the image, the detail areas, and not the color. That's the same thing. Here's the luminosity and the detail. Here's the color. Well, by separating the color out to two separate channels, if you apply your shadow and highlight here just to the luminosity and the detail of the image, you won't affect the color because the color is over here and you're just avoiding it. So we're just applying it right here. We avoid the color. So here's where you would actually apply your shadow and highlight to get the best results, because this way you're not getting any color shifts. We would raise our radius, right? Somewhere in here. And then we would bring down our highlights. And to see that, we'll just move this over here. There we go. And then when we switch back to RGB color mode, we have less of a color shift by a long shot because we didn't really affect the color. We just affected the shadow and highlight areas in the detail. Alrighty. That was kind of a long one, but I think it was worth it. Okay, let's carry on.